This is a story about the stories we tell ourselves, the stories we live out in the world, and the space between those two. It's about how we love, how we lose, and how we recover, or not, through the stories we make up in our heads. I'm Robin Rice, and this is also my story. Chapter 17. Things that go bump in the night. We cognitively understand that we live in a world of left and right, up and down, young and old. In short, that everything has its opposite. We are born, we die. We win some, we lose some. Everyone knows this. Few choose to think about it much, at least when things are going well. As I've often said, nobody soul searches on a good day. Rarely do we think about guardian angels coming with menacing devils to thwart us, at least in contemporary society, where we have whitewashed evil as a superstition and espoused darkness as a mere lack of education. The traditional old ones always gave their fair warnings. We seem to think we are above that need now. We seldom consider how the oft-cited holiday wish for world peace comes only because there has been, and continues to be, war. Brutal, devastating, powerfully destructive war. Where, I wonder, does the lack of education lie in this? Whatever we are tempted to think, it is inescapable that we will experience harm and loss in this life. Even so, we perpetually jockey for the first place position as if we're meant to win each and every time and at each and everything. From the next big promotion to getting into the shortest checkout line at the grocery store. We have culturally celebrated the rightness of winning so much. We now feel we must win. Anything less is a failure of the person that we are. In this, we meet our greatest story villain. Fear, the bastard. He steals so much life from us, and often for no good reason. Why is fear a he to me? Don't know, just feels that way. What is the worst that can happen is a question we're advised to ask ourselves when afraid. The idea is to reveal our fears as inconsequential, nothing we can't handle, and so to dismiss them. I say, hold up a minute, not so fast. There's gold here, story gold. Yes, fear is our most crippling, crushing villain. It keeps us up at night, wakes us up in the middle of the night, and gives us a sense of doom first thing in the morning. Not always, thank the heavens, but too often. But fear also guides and warns, and as such is our greatest protector. Even more valuable, though, is what fear can reveal to us. Where we are emotionally tied into this life. Where we are held back. What matters most and least. Where we are hooked into the opinions of others and society at large. Where our self-esteem and our worth among others gets the better of us. And far more. Plumbed for truth, fear tells us who we think we are, who we think we can be, and what we feel is out of reach. I don't know about you, but I want to know my fear villain and all of his minions of ghosts. I'd rather stare down the barrel of a shotgun I'm pointing at my own head than let my inner insecurities take shots at me willy-nilly. It takes courage, for sure, but what doesn't these days? As the saying goes, choose your hard. So, who are you, the protagonist of your own story? What do you fear? Is it something or nothing? This or that happening, or nothing ever happening again? Do you fear being seen or being hidden away? Never being picked for the team or being picked for the wrong one and having no way to quit? Which fear is greater, having a go at something and royally screwing up, or never getting into the game? Or getting into the game, making it to King of the Hill, only to lose that esteemed position, becoming irrelevant, inconsequential, insignificant? Or ask this, Are you afraid of something real and likely, or are you trapped in an as yet only imagined threat of imminent danger, pain, and damage? Is your fear concrete, or is it generalized anxiety with nothing real to point to? Both are experienced as real, but it's good, essential even, to know the difference. Knowing doesn't change it. There's more work than that to do. But it's the golden nugget to start with. Then here's the big one, the fear of death. Dying is no cognitive surprise, yet it still causes the greatest of anxieties. That final impending doom, the door that leads to who knows where. All our ancestors died, every one, likely with dreams still hoped for and items on the to-do list left undone. We could take comfort in this, but do we? Do we not see ourselves and our extinction as the final critical catastrophe? Life winning, us losing? Winner takes it all, the loser standing small. That's ABBA. Oh, and by the way, some of us lose our fear of death, at least what comes next. But the fear of dying, especially a long dying, is still very real, especially in our society today. What are we to do with all this fear? Since it comes from our depths, travels upward and out, without our conscious desire or intent, we can follow it backwards. From the topical expression, to the feeling that came before, to the trigger, to the belief, to the stem of the belief. In doing so, we will come to know something about ourselves and how we live. Also, how we don't live as fully as we might. We can ask our villain, where do you live in my body? Who within me is afraid? How old is that someone inside of me? Is it the me of today or someone I have long outgrown? With this inquiry, we come to great and valuable nuggets of truth for our living story. With this information, we can take our storytelling into mastery and then make different, more conscious choices. As for me and my story, for reasons I don't fully know, most likely having faced death so often and so early, I've always found fear to be a waste of time. I feel it, to be sure. Day to day, there are both conscious and subconscious levels of fear that vie for my attention, same as anyone. But that dastardly emotion, and to be fair, most unwanted emotions, seem like a paltry reason to do or not do, to go or not go, to jump or not jump. And so I tend to do, to go, and to jump. I'll shake in my boots in bed, and then I'll wake up and go for it. So even despite Rosalind's warnings of strange things to come, my attitude was, keep it coming. That was likely a mistake. I mean, definitely it was a mistake. But no, maybe not. Hell, just add it to the I have no effing idea story mountain. That one was growing by the minute. Enter the labyrinth. I had never thought about what might happen if the dark side broke through in the same way the light had, or whether there might be any kind of spectrum to it. I was already in the realm of things generally considered impossible and pretty happy about it because they were, so far, all ultimately good. Confusing, to be sure, but good. Better than the first 35 years of my life. Why I didn't think further than love and light, I can't imagine. You don't know what you don't know, I suppose. But looking back, I see that posture was more than naive. It was stupid. I guess after you've seen how bright and beautiful everything is out there, you don't think about the shadow sides of out there much. At least I didn't. Yes, I had seen and felt dead people early on, but barring that one time when they told me who killed Roxanne, they didn't seem to have an agenda. No boogeyman ever came to get me. Besides, Ghost was a love story, right? Ghostbusters, a comedy, yes? What real harm could come? Nell and my father were out there and communicating finally with me, but there were no fluttering curtains late at night, at least so far. In retrospect, I can see it was because I couldn't allow myself to fully believe in anything that was happening, not without understanding it. I could entertain possibilities and was delighted to do so, but would not settle on any kind of truth. It might have been my early days with religion that had me skeptical and wanting only what I could know to be real with a capital R. If the puzzle pieces didn't fit, they didn't. If they did, well, then we had something to talk about. And so I walked forward, deeply curious but generally unafraid, at least until my storyscape threatened to darken, become too bizarre, with too many shades of what the hell was that? It started innocently enough. It was a wintry Saturday, sometime mid-morning. I was still in bed, though I'd been awake for some time. The kids were at their dad's, and the neighborhood was only beginning to get out to shovel the overnight snow. I was propped up against the headboard thinking about all the things, again. Suddenly, as clear as if someone had been standing in the corner of my room, I heard a male voice say, "Hi, Robin." I nearly jumped out of my skin. This wasn't an internal voice, not the guidance from within I had been learning to hear and discern. This was clearly an external voice, a specific, unique male voice coming from somewhere in my room. Yet no one else was there. "Hi," I meekly responded, out loud, feeling stupid but also deeply intrigued. Nothing more. Maybe I was just hearing things. I mean, clearly I was hearing things, but maybe it was only my imagination, not my actual ears. Maybe I dozed off or something? I was afraid, genuinely, but also excited. I noticed the room had a tingling feeling to it. "If you were there," I asked aloud, "would you say that again?" "Hi, Robin," the voice said clearly, this time with a different inflection. Holy shit, oh my God. That was a direct response to my request. My eyes were crazy open as I sat straight up with the covers pulled clear to my chest. I wasn't dreaming. This was not my imagination. I heard it, a real voice. "Okay, so would you say that one more time?" I asked, again aloud. "Hi, Robin," the voice said with yet another intonation. This one was firm, as in, don't question me firm. All three intonations were different, but from the same voice. All three were heard with my actual functional human ears, in my room, while I was awake, alone. Some not embodied man was actually greeting me and responding to me. Creepy, cool, creepy, cool, I couldn't decide. "So, did you want something?" I asked. There was no answer. No further responses to my additional requests to hear the voice again. I have never heard it, or anything like it, in the 25-plus years since. But I did hear it that day. No one can ever tell me otherwise. It proved to be the start of a very eventful month. A few days later, when doing nothing more interesting than stepping into my bathroom and pulling back the shower curtain to turn the water on, I saw a light. Not just any light, though. A massive, brighter-than-bright white light. It lit up everything in my immediate vision, but not my peripheral vision. Yet the light was as bright as anything I'd ever seen, times 100. It held for a long flash. It did not hurt my eyes. Immediately I asked, "Who's there?" I don't know why I knew it was a who, but I was certain. There was no more light and no answer. Only a lingering feeling of awe. Forgoing the shower and sitting down to settle down, I reflected that the magnificent light was at least 8 feet tall and 2 or 3 feet wide. It filled the entire tub space. It had emanated the brightest, clean white light I'd ever seen. An angel? I didn't think so, at least not like the ones I'd seen as a child. They were far more opalesque, vague, generalized. This light seemed specific, individual. I had not been afraid, only startled, I noted. To me, light was always good. But in all honesty, good could not do this being justice. I felt that there should be another word for this light. Pure? Yeah, maybe pure. Was it anything like my awakening encounter? No, not really. It did seem otherworldly, obviously, but of its own nature and character. Again, singular, not a group or team or collective. He or she, I asked myself. She, for sure. Realizing that, I remembered Rosalind's words that I would meet someone named Elizabeth, though that was not her real name, and that she was more like a parable than a person. Bingo, this was Elizabeth. I suddenly knew. But what was a parable doing in my shower? Why that day? What did she want? Would she return? Like the voice I had heard, she never did. Not once. But maybe you don't need a visit like that more than once. I thought, not knowing what else to think. Eventually, I went about my day, shower and all. A few days after that, this poltergeist stuff was on a roll. I was arguing with myself about going to see the newly released movie Titanic. It was getting great reviews, but I wasn't going to a movie like that, not already knowing how it ended. And dead people floating around everywhere? Even if just a movie, no, thank you. But I kept getting the urge to go, an urgent urge. From where? From who? I had no idea. I reaffirmed my no thank you to the empty air. I was especially wary of this story, as I'd been traumatized as a child when I'd seen the movie The Poseidon Adventure, also about the Titanic. I recall having nightmares after. Anytime I heard Maureen McGovern singing There's Got to Be a Morning After on the radio, I felt strangely haunted. None of this seemed to matter to the urge I was getting to go to the movie. As if to make the suggestion clearer, I was awakened in the middle of the night with Celine Dion singing My Heart Will Go On through my computer at the top volume setting. Titanic song, of course. I recall running down the stairs to turn it down so as not to wake my neighbors. It would have been strange enough to have the song start playing on my computer all on its own, but what I found was worse. It was playing through my computer, with my computer turned off. Despite my frantic attempt to turn the computer on again in order to turn it off again, it would not boot until the song finished. That gave me the willies. Big time. I ran up to my bed, sitting in the dark for hours, afraid to go to sleep, trying to understand not only what could have caused the song to play, but what was going on with my life. After that, all kinds of things started up. Answering machines going staticky haywire, then cutting the caller off if it was receiving a message I didn't want to hear. Lights flickering at meaningful moments, multiple synchronicities a day. Friends calling right after I thought about them. It was like living inside of a magic show. I had so many questions, yet each answer led to only more questions. I was caught in an ever-turning kaleidoscope of otherworldly stories, each as unreasonable as the next. I found and read more books. I bought another round of divination tools, magical symbols, pendulums, and more. I even found an old, used Ouija board. I can't recall where it came from, and yes, I am saying it wrong. You'll understand why in a second. I kept it only long enough to try it once, despite feeling very uneasy about it from the start. I didn't know what it was, so I followed the instructions with a friend who was game to try it out. Without my intent, and with my eyes closed, I let the widget under my fingers move wherever it wanted to spell out whatever it had to say. My friend spoke the letters I could not see. G, E, T, O, U. When I got to the last letter, T, and realized what it was saying to me, get out, I felt it like a punch to the gut. So I did just that. I got out, fast. But the eerie feeling lingered long after. I was genuinely afraid to destroy the messenger, not wanting to offend the associated spirits, so I took it somewhere far away from me, a place where no one else would ever find it to use it again. Today, I do not recommend inviting that energy in, even once. The divination tools were helpful, but as ever, I was overeager and I quickly overused them. They worked until they didn't, and once they didn't, they never did again. It was like I was burning through each level of magical potential. By this time, I was getting more and more cautious about the source of things. It occurred to me that even if I had 40 to 50 guides, they might not all be good. No one had indicated that they were. I was an overeager Anne of Green Gables, meeting a mystified young Harry Potter. My Anne with an E stood for exuberant, excitable, and exacerbated. I had said during my awakening that I wasn't going to be good, so, well, maybe I needed to think about who and what might be allowed in as part of my inner circle. I didn't know how to go about making changes, so I decided to believe they were all good. Or if they were not, that the good ones would and could protect me. Certainly the light seemed much, much stronger than the dark. The confusion was getting to me, though. I had no idea what I was looking for, where I was going, or what might actually help me understand all that was happening. I felt stupid for believing, if you can call it that, in such hocus pocus, but also unable to deny that something was actually happening. To me. No one thing was repeatable and reliable, but the string of things was undeniable. If this were not enough, I was fundamentally changing in ways I could never have predicted. I was losing my old personality, the Robin I'd always been, in favor of a far kinder, gentler, more caring, and generous one. I wasn't trying, so I couldn't take credit for it. But I was observing myself and noticing. Maybe no one argued with me about refusing to be good during my awakening because they already knew it would naturally happen, at least over time. I mean, I wasn't really good or ultra good, no angel's wings here, but more good than before, and that felt strange. I was no longer exactly me. If I had to gauge, me being the type to always try to gauge, I'd say upon awakening it was 90% Robin, 10% of that other aspect. But now it was more like 80% Robin and 20% that other aspect. The more good aspect. It sounded too far-fetched, even to myself. I'd have truly thought myself more nuts than I did, except another thing was occurring simultaneously. Side note. This is high among the things here that I've debated sharing, because it makes me sound so full of myself. But it happened, so, well, here goes. Other people had started responding to me in ways they had not before. Strangers were somehow seeing me or sensing me and unhesitatingly approaching me. One of the most bizarre occurred when I was lost with a friend in downtown Baltimore after dark. My friend double-parked in front of a bar/restaurant so I could quickly run in and get directions. As she idled outside, I explained my needs to the bartender. I didn't notice the two women to my right, but they apparently noticed me. Out of nowhere, one woman put the hand of the other on top of my hand, without asking, and said, "This is what I'm talking about. This is what it feels like when you are awakened with spirit." What? Seriously? What? Was awake tattooed on my forehead? No. So what were they seeing, feeling, sensing? I was, honored, flattered, validated, yes. But also confused. Honestly, didn't know what to feel. I made a little chit-chat, nothing I remember, and got my directions and left. My friend in the car laughed when I told her, and I could see she didn't believe me. I wouldn't have believed the same story if our roles were reversed. But then, she didn't understand anything I'd been cautiously starting to share with her. I decided not to mention the shape-shifting. Of course, I didn't have the word shape-shifting back then. I had not yet encountered the shamanic path where the terminology is used in earnest. All I knew was that people were seeing me change form. Physically. In front of them. In specific, my face would change, most often to that of a 15-year-old or an 80-year-old. No idea why those ages, but it was consistent. Sometimes strangers saw it, while many close friends never did. I didn't know why it was happening, what good it did, or what I was meant to use it for. To this day, and yes, it still happens regularly, I never know when I'm doing it until I see a strange look come over people's faces or feel them startle and back away from me. Usually they look away, then look back, then say something. Instead of trying to tell you about it myself, I can offer a few direct descriptions from some who have seen it more recently. I asked them to write what they saw, so these are direct quotes. From a woman I'd met a few times visiting my home. Quote, "I had to look twice to be sure what I was seeing. What happened seemed so natural and casual that I wasn't alarmed by it. You started to get blurry, like you were gently vibrating, as did the energy air around you. You didn't seem separate from the air around you, like you and it were viscous and of the same substance. You then became more blurry or hazy, like your particles had become dispersed, kind of like a ray of sunshine on a summer's afternoon when you were a kid, and you'd be sitting in the home of a loved one and see the dust particles fall after sweeping the floor. And then you slowly and gently came back together. It was all good, positive, smiley energy." End quote. From another woman I'd recently become friends with. Quote, "I looked to the side and I saw you under your hat. Wide open, startled, innocent eyes. An innocence and an age all at once. The skin of a baby, yet old as time. It was quick, a moment, so fleeting I would have doubted myself were it not for the lasting sensation that it left in my body. A sense of time collapsed. A gap in the space fabric are the words that emerge. You got up and left, and I was left with a sensation of a glitch. A peaceful, odd glitch." End quote. And from a man I'd been working with. Quote, "The first time you changed, I thought it was my glasses fogging up, but it wasn't. You looked much younger than you are now, maybe mid-30s. I felt really good, really peaceful, and then you started looking like you again." End quote. Side note, it's funny to me, now that I'm in my 60s, that I'm starting to shapeshift into the age I was when it all began. Yet another woman, this one a professional client, put it bluntly, "You pixelate." None of these people had heard of shapeshifting, let alone seen it before. This would have completely baffled me, except that I remembered having seen it once myself as a teenager. It wasn't me as the shapeshifter, though. It was a baby I was babysitting for. She was no more than 9 months old, laying on the couch as I played with her, when her face became that of an elderly Chinese man who seemed quite upset with me. I looked away, suddenly afraid of the small baby and the feeling of eeriness in the room. I felt stupid. She was just a baby. But when I looked away and looked back, the Chinese man reappeared to stare at me. I only saw it that one time, but once was enough. Without this frame of reference, I would have had no idea what people were talking about. But having seen it myself, I knew. But, where was all this going? What was I doing? Hello, dear universe, I have no idea. What was happening to me? This was far more fiction than reality, at least any reality I'd ever heard of. It was a smorgasbord of wacko-making chaos, and I felt I was becoming the poster child for it all. Was I picked, or being picked on, for the folly of some unknown suite of gods? I didn't know. What I did know was that I needed help. Actual direction, please. The otherworldly finally seemed to hear me and began to appear to me in a repeatable and reliable fashion. Even if it was only in my dreams, I'd take it. Enter your labyrinth at BeWhoYouAre.com.